All right, good morning, everyone. Go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for attending today, taking time out of your day to go through the information. Here at IQE, we wanted to make sure, with it being an important session, budget session, that and this being the halftime week, that we took a second and a little bit and gave an update of everything that was happening at the State House. And so with me today is our Legislative and Policy Director, Molly Collins. I think you all know Mary Aker and Julie Sutherland with our SGO as well. I know that a couple other staff members from IQE might join as well throughout the call. I've had some emails, calls, and texts. We've had some people some school members will join in late, and we'll go ahead and get started. I know a lot of you, but Ted Feeney with IQE work across all of our platforms and help out with legislative and policy and all sorts of school choice issues. So want to do sort of activities like this where we will update schools on current events. We'll go ahead and get started. Just some of the discussion items from today, like who we are, 21 session, go through, recap the first half of the session, go through some of the education bills that are front and center, the current status of those bills, talk a little bit about next step with those bills, talk about some of the opposition that we're hearing to private school specific bills, and next steps with all of that. So just beyond, I know a lot of you know us as a SGO, but IQE does a lot of legislative and policy development as well as advocacy work. We also have a outreach arm, which is My School Options. We have a school finder and a school calculator to see if families that might be interested in the choice scholarship program, the voucher program, to see if they would qualify. So we get a number of families each and every month that will log on to that and to express interest in the program. And then we also do a lot of marketing, communications, digital work to inform local communities about what we do and about K-12 education in Indiana. So Indiana General Assembly 2021 budget session. We are really in the thick of it. As we have said around here all week, the easy part is over, and now the hard part begins. So we're right in the middle. I have a little graph at the bottom of this screen. Thank you to our friends at the Corden group for posting that and sharing that with us. So we're right in the middle. It's crossover, where bills that were passed in the House are now sent over to the Senate, and vice versa. So bills that were in the Senate now move over to the House for hopefully passage. Session started in early January and will end at the end of April, we hope. I have a link there for the all of the bills, and then just sort of a visual of showing where we are in the process. So we've gone through the first half, and now we've moved on to kicking off next week to the second half of the session. Just a little bit of a level set of all the enrollment for K-12. I just wanted to put this up here to show, because there's been a lot of discussions about bills and where students are and money and funding. So just a sort of a graph of where students are attending this year. And this would be all the students that where tuition support funding is paid. It does not take into account students that might be at home, like a homeschooling environment. So you can see, like, there's private school students, there's a section there, as well as another section for students that might be utilizing a choice scholarship voucher award. And just as we talk about some of the bills and the expansion, there are there's a number that's in the private school, non-public, that excludes choice scholarship currently, that a number of those families might be newly eligible in the future. So something to think about with eligibility, where it might help additional families with your school. So I wanted to turn it over to Molly Collins, who's our legislative and policy director, and she's over at the State House full time. So it's every once in a while, nice to see her here at the office. And we connect multiple times a day on bills and what's happening. So Molly, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Ted. Nice to meet everyone. Once again, I'm Molly Collins. Many of you may have known Caitlin Bell. I took over her position as she's no longer with us. That being said, I'll start diving into some of the big bills that are moving the education space this legislative session. So obviously it's a budget year, so the biggest bill moving is House Bill 1001, the state budget. It has quite a few education funding items in it. Some of the major things we wanted to hit on, though, was that it will, in the current version, in the House version, I should say, it increases the tax credit scholarship program, the statewide cap. It's currently at 16.5 million. Under this current budget, it would increase it, under the current House budget, it would increase it to 18 million in the first year, so 2022, and then 19 million would be the cap in year 2, so 2023. It also increases the tax credit scholarship program eligibility. So currently it's 150% of free and reduced lunch, which for a family of 4 comes out to about $72,000 in their household income. So this bill currently would increase it to 225% in the first year, and then 300% in the second year, which for a family of 4 comes out to about $145,000. And this would also mirror the voucher income eligibility increase that we'll talk about in 1005. So those are the major aspects of the House budget at the moment. But now it is getting sent over to the Senate, and they often tend to have quite a few tweaks to it. So I would not see this as a guarantee just yet. And I guess I'll move on to House Bill 1005. So 1005 is the School Choice Matters bill. Well, Ted, do you want to go to the next slide? So the School Choice Matter bill has an expansion of the Choice Scholarship Program. So just as I mentioned with the SGO income eligibility, the vouchers would mirror it, and the income eligibility would increase from 100% of free and reduced lunch to 225%, and then ending at 300%. So making more families eligible for this program. It also increases the scholarship amount that each student will receive. So instead of tiers based on income of 50% of state tuition support and 70% and 90%, it would streamline everything to be just 90% for each student. And then lastly, in terms of the expansion of the Choice Scholarship Program, it also adds a 9th pathway for foster care students to now be eligible for the voucher program. They already qualify, they're eligible based off their income, but did not have an official pathway to utilize the voucher program. Go ahead to the next slide. So that is the first part of 1005. The next part of 1005 creates a new program in Indiana, and there's currently about 5 states that are doing it, but there's at least 7 or 8 states that are moving this across the country. Right now, I know Missouri just passed this out of their house as well. So it creates an education scholarship account, sometimes called an education savings account, but usually it's just referred to as ESA. And so this would allow, under 1005, this would allow a parent to essentially sign a contract with the state and take control over the tuition support money that their child would already be receiving. So the money they would get If, for instance, if they're going to a traditional public school, the parent can sign a contract, take control over it, and really customize and specialize their child's education for what works best for them. So this right now would only apply for children with special needs, foster care students, and military families active duty. And they can take these funds, so it's 90%, just like the current voucher. It would take 90%, and the families could use it to attend a private school and you pay their tuition and fees, or they could completely customize, maybe get a private tutor, especially for those with special needs. It allows them to really have the different therapies that they might need. Go ahead, Ted.
Sure. Hey, Molly, if we could maybe answer Mike's question. Mike had a question about how are the bills defining foster care currently in the foster system, adopted out of foster system?
Trying to remember because I know they made a tweak to it. So I believe it's just it has to be approved by DCS. So that's the first aspect of it. But it's anyone who I think is currently in the foster care system. Let me double check though, Mike. I might have to follow up with you to see if it would apply to those who are adopted out. I'm not sure on that aspect, but they would definitely be in the current foster care system. So I'll follow up with you.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, just, I mean, I currently have a family that's been asking about that because it seems like if they're expanding the foster care, role to being in current foster care, there seems to be so much movement of people around within a foster system that if it feels like it would almost discourage fostering to adopt. And if they're adopted out of it, then all of a sudden they would lose that choice of where they want to help their child be supported by their school as well. So I mean, hopefully we would love to see that be defined as those who have been adopted out of foster care, because there'd be a lot more stability there for families then to be able to really make the choice they want to make.
I completely agree, and I do remember discussions like that occurring in the House with both their policy and the current bill author, Representative Baining. But let me just double check the wording to make sure it does include that, because the entire goal of it is to have that stability for foster students. The same with military. The goal of that is to have that stability because they can move around quite a bit. So let me double check the wording on that to ensure that that was included.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, so going back, so to 1005, this was passed out of the House Education Committee. Then it was passed out of the House Ways and Means Committee. And finally, it's passed out of the House of Representatives, 61 to 38. Each of these votes were a party line vote with Republicans in support and Democrats opposed. I don't think there was any, unfortunately, anyone in the Democratic Party that did support these, but there were just a couple of Republicans that did not support it on the House floor. But overall, it was pretty much a party line vote. And so now the bill was referred to the Senate and will be heard in their Senate Education Committee, and then most likely go on to appropriations. This language 1005 is also currently in the budget, so every aspect of this is already in the budget as well. So as we continue to move through the process, keeping everything that's in the budget 1005, all of the SGO language, the increases, that's all in the budget, and that's something that needs to be really pushed to make sure that the Senate continues to include it. Oftentimes, we'll kind of get more favorable on the House side in terms of the SGOs and the different language that we'd like, but the Senate is a little bit tougher. So now, as Ted said, the hard work really begins, and we need to make sure that the Senate includes all of the budget information the way that it currently is in the state budget, House Bill 1001. So I see a question here: what amounts of votes are needed to pass these bills when they hit the floor next? Simple majority. So it is in both the House and the Senate. They just have to pass it with, just a simple majority. Okay, Ted, thanks. Then on the Senate side, they had two bills of their own that of note. So Senate Bill 412, I should say both of these bills in a way mirror House Bill 1005. So Senate Bill 412 was another education scholarship account, or ESA creation. Is very similar to 1005. There's a few small differences. I'd say one of the main differences is that it did not include military. So it was simply for those children with special needs who require an IEP, and is also the foster care students. So no military in that one. And then Senate Bill 413. So it has a couple items, not necessarily non-public related, but it has the foster care pathway that we mentioned earlier in 1005. So it would allow foster care kids to now qualify for the voucher or choice scholarship program. It also then has a study of charter schools, and it also holds schools harmless. So it does quite a few things there. Ted, go ahead on to the next slide. So Senate Bill 412 did pass successfully out of the Education Committee in the Senate. Once again, it was a party line vote. The Senate Appropriations Committee, however, did not hold a vote on the bill, meaning that this bill number is now dead. So while the bill is dead, the idea is not dead, especially since 1005 is currently moving, and the House budget, which also has that language in it, is moving. So the Chairman Mishler of Senate Appropriations, he noted that he wanted all school funding items to really just be included in the state budget bill. So I would look for discussions of this to occur in terms of, I guess now that 1005's moved over to the Senate, look for it in the school funding subcommittee in the Senate, and then the Senate Appropriations Committee, as well as they may hear 1005 in the House and the Senate Education Committee. Go ahead to the next slide. So 413, this successfully passed all aspects in the Senate. So it passed in their Education Committee, their Appropriations Committee, and then on the Senate floor itself. And these were also pretty much party line votes in this case. And so this was now sent over to the House and is referred to their committees over there. I believe Representative Baining is the sponsor for this bill on the Senate or on the House side. And then 1005, I don't think I mentioned the sponsor in the Senate is Senator Buchanan. Go ahead to the next slide. And I'll leave that to you, Ted.
All right, cool, Molly. So always that question, what's current, what is next? So what we're gonna do is we'll be reaching out to schools. We really want to have a big thank you push to thank members of the House, the 61 that voted in support of this bill. So we're hoping that schools will, your school community will send messages or send personal notes. I know it's old school, but it really has an impact. We've obviously there was hundreds of thousands of emails that were sent to House members, also to Senate members for the bills. The energy was amazing in the first half of the session. The first education committee meeting, we had 32 individuals that came to testify, and with really short notice, with under a week. And gosh, IQE, we worked with partners to source sort of 29 of those 32. So just a lot of energy, a lot of emails, and it kept going all the way through. So that's why we always do a preview and a recap of the session, but with all of the these important bills and a lot happening, we wanted to take a moment here to recap the first half of the session. Our ask is to moving forward is that for ask of the state senators is to support all of the the language, the school choice language that's expansion. that's in the House budget bill that move forward. So it's a pretty, I think we want to move out of talking about specific House bills now and just make that specific ask. That's so we don't get sort of caught up in like wordplay. It's a pretty simple ask and pretty consistent across all schools. So I wanted to sort of transition into the opposition. There's been some pretty heated opposition to these bills. There's been some media coverage. Unfortunately, as happens every session, sometimes there's coverage and incorrect information that's put out there. So I have a few slides we have a few slides in a row that are some of the things that we've seen so far and some of the facts. And before I get into that, I don't want that. This isn't presentation or the call today is not the end all be all. It's really just we're stopping for a second, sort of talking about what's coming up, what we've seen so far. We're happy to do a number of calls and or send out some materials to schools. Happy to talk individually. You can happy to meet, come your way, whatever works best for you to be able to respond to it, or if families want to engage, or now that it's application season starting for next fall, if there's families that are on the fence or could benefit to engage with them as well. So here at IQE, obviously wanted to offer that. So today isn't the end all be all. I know other people and organizations will also be having information sessions on it as well. That's a good thing. And things change so quickly. So hopefully everyone's dialed in and obviously want to be there to help and provide accurate information. So one of the big arguments, there's an argument about different school delivery models, and the big one is that public schools are underfunded, and I don't really need to read through everything, but during the current session, there was 800 million in in new funding, and IQE, we're a school choice advocacy organization, so we advocate for all school types and more funding and more equitable funding. So there was over 800 million that specifically went to public K-12, and then as far as like some of the math stuff that pops up, the students that receive the Choice Scholarship Award, they're receiving less than 40%. I think it's for 38 is the number, 38% less than the funding for for a student that happens to be in a public district school. So a big change there. And then there's been a sort of an interesting dynamic where we've seen over a decade of 22,000 less students that are attending a public district school, but then those same districts have increased their staffing by more than 500 staff members. So it's not necessarily teachers, but sort of a staffing surge like that doesn't correlate with the number of student for a decrease. So just an interesting dynamic there. Another way, and some of these are worded similarly, but wanted to cover sort of separately and didn't want to throw them all on the same page. As was said by both the speaker and the House Ways and Means chairman, on the House, the sort of the funding. Indiana funds students, not systems. Money mostly follows the student. And I think you all know that, the students don't, it's a 50, 70 or 90% award for the, for the voucher. So it's not 100%. And just a little bit of historical data. I know some of you know that I was around right at the beginning with our State Department of Education and with the implementation of the program. Indiana saved over 750 million in the last 10 years on this program, and that cost savings is moved back to the tuition support funding. So public district schools would not be also in the shape that they would be in. That money's moved back to them. And then there's been some information out there about teacher pay, teacher compensation. The teacher pay commission that was that the governor set up. They just released 37 long-term recommendations at the end of last year, like right before the session began. So, I don't know if there's this expectation by some that everything's implemented or discussed during the session. I mean, bills were filed last fall. So, these are sort of long-term, discussions to have. So this will be an ongoing dynamic moving forward as well, of how, districts could pay, um, you know, um, you know, their teachers more. And one, to give an example, and it's not to call out any like one district, but there was a recent op-ed in the Fort Wayne area where they looked at where district employees and how they were paid, and starting at the top of the pay scale, there was 137 administrators or staff members before the first teacher at the highest pay rate was at number 138. So something to think about as well. That seemed to be a lot of staff positions, and we know that private schools, you do a lot with with less. So thank you for your work there. The couple questions before I go on to the next slide. Know if the number of teachers has increased or decreased. Don't know that off the top of my head. We're looking at a lot of data right now to put out sort of some overall like fact sheets and do more things like this. So have to follow up with you on that particular question. The counts of districts, we're crunching all that sort of per legislator. So we can follow up on that. And then can we share? Oh yeah, definitely. This is the reason for these calls and any information that we send out to schools. It's to be helpful. It's for your school community, families to engage and be a part of the process and advocate for for your students and in your school that's important to you. So definitely. The voucher program only funds rich families. So if we have sort of the current program and then sort of the proposed expansions under the current guidelines, we looked at some of the Bureau of Labor statistics, a police officer and an elementary school teacher, they currently would not qualify. So I don't, there's sort of this, it's not really a fair assessment to say that families would be rich, not accurate. The programs, for the 10 years it started with lowest income families, and now they're, especially you have the COVID discussion involved as well. It's to that more middle class families are helped as well, and more families from from your school are helped as well. So we have a lot of other examples like that we'll be putting out, like as we sort of have the eligibility increases, like it's 225% free and reduced lunch. That's like a example of perhaps like a special education teacher and a paramedic. They currently wouldn't qualify, but in the first year, they if it expands to 225, they would be. So that's a positive. And just a little bit of, I know you receive a lot of emails and things about happening at the federal level. The 150,000 for a family of four. A lot of the stimulus funding, when you see that language, it's included. They wrap around that number, so that's out there commonly. So just an FYI, as sort of comparing and talking about the need of families. I have a question. Will you be sending the recording? Yes. Yeah, I'll be sending out the actual recording and the presentation. With this information, we know with a lot of families, just school staff weren't able to join today, or the time didn't work, whatever reason. Yeah, we're gonna, this doesn't always work for everyone. So yes, we will get that out there. Here's one of the bigger ones that we've seen. Expanding eligibility takes up 1/3 of all new education funding. That's definitely false. In reality, it's, if, and there's a lot of ifs in there, that's sort of the word. It's of where the funding will go to. And especially on the ESA, it's a brand new program, and that actually won't start for another year. That would be the 22-23 school year. But probably not likely, based on information from other states, that would ramp up to, thousands of families won't be utilizing that in the first year. It'll take time, just like what happened with the SGO and the voucher. There's some education that's needed. People need to be aware of it. And we'll see who will utilize that program. And we're working on some like charts and graphs and some bullet points to make that sort of easy to digest and the specifics. But there are, sort of Molly said, there's a lot of ifs right now. A lot of tweaks being placed. Yes, definitely.
Hey, Ted,
Yes.
I would just add to this that some of those numbers that are out there, that's estimating at the highest amount. So they're kind of being a little bit liberal in their estimations. For instance, when you're looking at the ESA program in Arizona, their first year, they only had 52 students. And it took them about 4 years to get over 1,000 students. So that would be a very small program to start off with. So I would say both the Choice Scholarship Program and the ESA estimations, those are their top estimations. It would be smaller, the people who actually take it up, especially within the very first year.
Cool, thanks Molly, for that follow-up and an example. So to be continued on that. We'll continue to provide information as new things come out. But again, a lot of false information out there, from different schools. An oldie but a goodie. Private schools have no accountability. I've seen this thrown in at the end of taking 1/3 of funding, and oh, by the way, private schools have no accountability. I think we all know private schools actually have more accountability than other school delivery models on multiple different levels. From the actual like accountability standpoint, with the 2-year, if schools are not doing well, can't add any new voucher students. You're getting good return on investment of the higher graduation rates for high schools. Anytime you have a student that leaves your school, there's reporting and refunds. And then there's also for the accountability, there was a second spring window as well set up, so that there is that check-in for student movement. So obviously that's always false, and we've covered that in a number of different our newsletter or different calls or recaps of as we talk. But that's been out there for a long time, and we know that one's false. And another question: slides available? Yes, yeah. I'll share that. I'll get the recording and send out the slides. And yeah, realize that this day and time might not have worked for everybody, so we want to get out that information. So as I said earlier, now the hard part begins. So there's a lot of different things that schools and your school community can do to engage with state senators. Next week we'll set up a brand new action alert on our action center, which is very effective. We've had quite a few communications with legislators that they have been hearing from you, been hearing from us through our action center. And it's not just the personalized emails in there. It's also, we've had a number of schools that I'll send out phone numbers as well. We had a number of schools that they had some phone campaigns where they had whether it be House members or Senate members, reaching out via that way as well. Some some are sending letters, whatever way. But really, it's time to take action over the next 2 months, and we'll let everybody know and be really up to date and real time of what's happening, because things will move quickly. We are expecting testimony at least once, and that's expected in April. We'll let everybody know, and if things change. There's been a number of op-eds from school districts. If this is something that you would like to do, a number of us have gone through training of how to do this properly and effectively. So we're happy to help as a resource. Feel free to contact. Again, same way with TV and radio. Depending on your local outlet, happy to help with that. If there are community members or school supporters or families that want to engage in that way. There are some town hall meetings going on. Some are virtual, some are in person, depending on the area and what people are comfortable with. So, third house meetings, that's a way to engage as well. Something that's been very effective, basically 60-second stories, a video, whether it's a student or a parent. And we can send those directly to legislators and what school, and target it to a particular legislator. There are a number that are on the fence about the bills, and we're going to work with with the state senators on that, and also the social media platform as well. So a lot of different ways to engage, and we can again hold sessions at your school or do something broadly. There'll be a number of opportunities over the next 2 months to do that. There's an example, just our Action Center. It's pretty easy. We send out a link, click on it, put in, I won't click on that today, but you can go through and, just click, tweak, write your own personal message in there. It goes to every senator, pretty quick and easy to connect with everyone about this issue. And then there's my contact information. That's my cell and email. I know a number of you already have my number, and reach out and engage with you. Always enjoy that, and whatever we can do to be of help. Now that was all the information that we had today. I don't know if anybody had any questions as we've gone through the information, or something maybe we didn't cover. There's a lot of information that's moving quickly, but we want to make sure that we address it. So sort of monitor the chat for a minute, or feel free to speak up, take yourself off mute, whatever works best for you.
Yeah, it's Mike Allen.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Molly had said, she put in the chat the follow-up on the question about foster care. It says here, ESAs apply to foster care students who are in the foster care system at the time the account is established and are approved by DCS. So the question, so in a scenario where a young man might have been adopted out of the foster system last year, that would not be applicable to him at this point. But if they're in the foster care system now and get an account established, it would apply to them if they get adopted out of it. Is that what I'm understanding, Molly?
Yes, that is correct. And that's just the current form of the bill. So there's always could be more tweaks coming, but yeah, that's what the current form says.
Got you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we always get a number of emails or calls from schools if there's particular language. I know some of you definitely monitor the bills very closely. If there is that language, feel free to connect with Molly and myself on that, forward it our way so that we can take that up with both Chairman Boehning and Chairman Rotz on the education committees. Any other items that we need to cover today? Well, again, as I said, that's sort of the halftime update. We just wanted to make sure that we didn't move on from this week without touching base with everyone. And if there, again, if the questions, feel free to reach out. We're planning on, a number of school communications. I think I was teased last week by missing a day of sending stuff out. So just if there's information that pops up, we want to make sure that we get that out there. Oh, one more question. Does the ESA cover tuition at a school that does not accept a voucher?
That's a good question. They would have to be approved. So anything that's eligible to be used to have ESA money used towards it has to be approved by the Treasurer of State's office. So if it's on their list, then it will be approved, or then it will be able to be used for ESAs. So I believe so. I believe that'd be a yes to your question, as long as the Treasurer of State has it within their education savings account app or website.
And I know if there's anything else as well, feel free to reach out. Any other questions that pop up later, or if items that you're talking about at school, feel free to reach out as well. And we'll obviously send out communications to schools as there are changes or new information. But again, thank you so much for taking time out of your day, and thank you for the work that you do. Take care, everybody.